What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Thee CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story, everyone's story matters. What's your story? I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and I am honored and it is a privilege to introduce my guest today, my friend, Becky Yaworski. What's going on, Becky?
Not much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, just full disclosure for everyone listening right now, that was about my fifth take on this. If you've been listening for a while, you've just noticed that I completely changed things up. And we have a new tagline. Everyone has a story. Everyone's story matters. What's your story? And so it's going to be rolling out. I'm going to be getting better. We're going to play around with this over time. But Becky was so kind as to listen to me and giggle at me the many times that I did this. Becky, thank you. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So, Becky, you and I, we haven't talked in, wow, it's been a good while. Probably 10 years? 9, 10?
Well, my last year at Bethel was 2010, spring of 2010, so.
Yeah, that was when I graduated, so.
10 years. Yeah.
Or technically, sort of. That's when I walked.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, so that's where we met. We met in college. We met at good old Bethel College, now Bethel University.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You and Margie were good pals, and Sam and I would run around with you guys. You were one of the co-conspirators in the tapioca pearl wars with the bubble tea.
Yes, and I actually completely forgot about that, to be honest. And then I was listening to Margie's episode, and I was riding the bus going to work, and I was just bursted out laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous, but just such good, fun times.
It was such a good time. It was such a fun time.
Yeah.
I feel
it's so fun.
I don't have anybody that I can do that with. I could do it to my wife, but she'd probably be like, what are you doing? And why are you doing that?
Yeah.
She thought it was pretty funny whenever she listened to that podcast. So.
Yeah. It's just so gross too. Tapioca. Our hair is just disgusting afterwards. But
I know.
Worth the fun, I guess.
I know. Yeah. If you've ever had, if you're listening and you've ever had bubble tea, it's the little tapioca pearls, or these little brown, round balls. And they give you these big old straws, and we spit them at each other like spit wads when we get them. And we had these big old wars where it'd be chasing each other around in the parking lot of the bubble tea place in South Bend, Indiana. It was a good time.
Yep.
It was a good time.
Yep, innocent college fun.
I know. Yeah. Going to Bethel, you had to make your own fun somehow,
Right. Exactly.
Becky, you are in Chicago nowadays.
Yes.
And
just celebrated my 9-year anniversary in Chicago.
Whoop, whoop. Congratulations. Yep. It's a good city.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I always like to say it's a real city. And people kind of look at me and they're like, what do you mean? Every city's real. I'm like, no, but it's next to New York. I don't even know what I just said there. New York. Next to New York, it's like a real city. It's got all the bells and whistles and it's got everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I definitely even to this day, I still have these moments where I'm just walking down the street and I look around and I'm like, holy cow, I actually live here.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just on vacation or something.
Yeah.
But it's I'm like, wow, I actually live here. And it's you just have these moments of just being kind of taken back at just how awesome it is.
Yeah.
And then I go and visit other cities.
Right.
I remember going to Phoenix, and I was got to downtown Phoenix, and there's 10 buildings, tall buildings, and I was like, what is that?
Yeah, right.
It's not a city.
I know. Well, and that's what I mean. I've lived in quite a few different places, and from San Diego to Minnesota to, I don't know, just different places in Indianapolis, whatever, and. There's all these similarities, but when you go to Chicago, it's just completely different. It's just different.
Right.
There's no other way to describe it.
Right. And I went to, my brother lives in Minnesota actually, in Rochester. And,
nice.
But I went up to Minneapolis and met them there. But I remember I had like a free time, and I was just kind of walking around the city, and then I like stupidly bought a day pass for the bus and train or whatever, because I was like, oh, I need to like pay for the bus, right?
Yeah.
And then you just walk on, and no one's like maybe they'll check, but probably not. And I was like, what the heck? I just like spent all this money for no reason. Like no one. But of course, if I didn't buy the ticket,
exactly, then you'd been in trouble. Minnesota's like the Twin Cities, especially like Minneapolis, like it's up there. I mean, it's a good city, but it's still different. Yeah. It's like a bigger city. It's the Twin Cities are really underrated in my opinion. I think they're like some of the most underrated like places in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a good time up there. Yeah. I remember I went for a run, and my sister-in-law was like, oh, did you go over the Mississippi River? And I was like, I like ran over this like little creek thing. And she was like, because I've only seen the Mississippi from like down by St. Louis where it's huge.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, that was the Mississippi. And I was like, oh. I had no idea. But like the neighborhoods all along the river there are like super cool.
Yeah.
I would love to go back and spend more time up there.
Yeah, you'll have to. I mean, it's especially during the winter, or not the winter, summer. Avoid the winter.
Yeah.
But especially during the summer. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I love it. Well, Becky, you so both at Bethel, and you transferred out of Bethel to Columbia College in Chicago. But both places you studied sign language interpreting.
Yes.
Which is awesome, and really like it's just like a unique field that you know, like you just don't, I don't know. Bethel had a great program, I would say, or at least a bigger program.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's kind of a normalized thing there with, you know, we had chapel 3 days a week, and you'd always see the interpreters up there practicing and doing their, it was part of your like class, right? When you had to go up there?
Yeah, it was like a requirement for, I think when you got to your junior year, it was a requirement. So I got out of there before I had to do that, because I absolutely hate interpreting music. And I was like, I am not going up there in chapel interpreting these songs, because that's like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, that's funny. It's such a good like place to have practice though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of places or not a lot of schools that you'd have that ability to like a regular 3 days out of the week you'd be able to go up and like do something like that.
I would say, it was a pretty safe environment. From what I remember, Noah, when I was there was no deaf students. I think the only deaf people on campus were like the professors in our class. So,
right. Isn't that interesting?
Like no one was like missing out on the chapel experience because of bad interpreters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like, because it would have sucked if there was like a deaf student who like really wanted to be there, and then they have these students who are like maybe not doing the best job. But yeah, it was like a super safe environment to practice.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. What led you? You know, like I said, this is. I feel like maybe it's not. Maybe this is my ignorance, but I feel like it's kind of a unique field to go into. What's led you that direction? Like, what was?
So, yeah, I actually went to an elementary school that was a cluster site for deaf students.
Okay.
Well, actually, special needs students in general. So, like, all of the students with special needs in like our county would get bused to my elementary school. But this is in Crystal Lake, Illinois, so like an hour and a half northwest of Chicago. And so it was a cluster site, so there was a bunch of deaf kids in my school. And I had 3 girls in my class in first grade. And I just like, as soon as I met them, or like my first day of class, I was like, this is awesome. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to like talk to these people.
Yeah.
And so I first just learned the alphabet and would spell like every single word to them. Yeah. Which is kind of hilarious to me, because I've gone back and looked at things that I wrote as a child, and my spelling is just absolutely atrocious. So like, I don't really know how we communicated, because I was not spelling any of those words correctly. But
that's also interesting though. Like that's a part of like sign language interpreting. You know, obviously it's not everything isn't spelling it out, but you have to be proficient in grammar and spelling. I guess spelling more so than grammar, but interesting. I never even thought about that.
and it's funny now because sometimes I'll like be writing something and I'm trying to remember. I like can't write the word. I'm spelling this wrong, or I'm texting and I'm spelling this word wrong.
Yeah.
And then if I sign it, sign it to myself, and I'll sign it, like spell it correctly. And then I'm like, oh, okay, and then I can write it. So it's weird how your brain works with language. But so yeah, and then I would like rent sign language dictionaries from the library and kind of like just learn the signs that I needed. And I sat in class and watched the interpreter interpret and kind of just like learn sign language through her. And one of the deaf girls, Abby, she became like my best friend in elementary school. So by the time I graduated, like got to 5th grade, I would say I was fluent in sign language. And I would say by the end of like 1st grade, I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be an interpreter. This is what I'm going to do.
That's so cool.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of funny because, you have like career day and you have to write about like what you want to be when you grow up, and people will be like, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'm going to be the president. And I'm like, I'm going to be a sign language interpreter.
That's so cool though. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's, very fortunate. I feel like especially in our generation, there's a lot of like, most people I feel like graduate high school and have no idea what they're going to do. Sure. Or like what to study in college. Yeah. And kind of go in with just like a general idea, and then don't really pick their specific field until later on. So I was very fortunate to just kind of know right off the bat that that's what I was going to do. I
would agree. You are very fortunate. Yeah. I've talked about that on here before, how I'm like, those people that just know. Yeah. It's like, jerks, No, I think it's awesome. There's just so many people and a lot of people just across the board, across the country, especially go into college with an idea of what they want to do and change a major. And, there's some really high percentage, rate of people that change. And there's some people that just like they just go into it. And I think that's awesome. And I think everybody wants to know and they go in, but it's just hard. But I think that's really cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah. So here's a question I like to ask. Obviously, like you were drawn to this field at a young age. I think that there are, different like stereotypes or stigmas or whatever for this population of people, special education in general. What, like, as a young girl, was there something, like, was there a time that you remember, like, just caring about other people and that empathetic heart that you clearly have, and I know that you have, that you, like, that really, like, resonated or that really came out, and was it just that moment when you started to, like, blend those cultures and understand a different set of people, or was there a specific time in your life that you remember anything?
I think, I don't know if there really is a moment, but at the same time, and I was kind of thinking about this because I was sure you were going to ask me about interpreting at some point on this podcast. Of course, yep. And like, I think I was fortunate enough to be immersed with deaf people at such a young age that, like, I don't remember what life is like to not be around deaf people. Yeah. So I don't really. Sometimes, like, growing up as a kid specifically, like, I didn't really see how they, like, they couldn't hear, but I didn't really see how they were different than the rest of us. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. They were just my classmates. Yeah. Now as an adult, when I'm looking at, like, the political side and all of, like, the oppression, as you get older, you learn more, and now I see how it's divided. Yeah. But, like, as a kid, it was just like, oh, these are my friends. And,
right. Which I think speaks more to, that, just different, what's the correct word? I don't know. When we look at people, whether it's, there's a specific word I'm looking for, and it's eluding me at the moment. I don't know, whatever it is, like, just when you treating people differently and looking at people differently, it's a learned trait, whether that's, I think that, we can see that in our kids and in our children. And this is one of the things I love to say is that time is on our side. We're fairly young as a country and as a nation, and as we continue to merge these different cultures and these different groups of people, these different ethnicities together, and at such a young age, like you said, it's elementary school or whatever, when you start to be able to understand people and see people with different skin colors, different cultural backgrounds, different ways of growing up, and whatever it is, I think that it's like you just said, it's like you don't even think about it. It's what you grew up with. It's not something like you look and go like, why is that person different than me? It's just this piece that's like, oh, this is just how our world is, which is so true. It's just how our world is. And now we're so, as adults, in so many different ways and places, we look at people when we try to like correct these wrongs or correct these ways that we have in our head versus, like you just said, it's these unconscious biases that we try to like correct. Yeah. And I think sometimes it does more harm than it's good, but it's necessary at the same time. So it's just complicated, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting too to think about just with, so like the ADA, like Americans with Disability Act, like that started that was founded in 1990. So when I was in kindergarten, like that was only 5 years after that became a law, which that's the law that requires interpreters to be in the classroom, right? So it's kind of like you think about that timeline, and it's like, I don't know,
kind of mind blowing. Yeah, you're like lucky that you like had that opportunity.
Yeah. Like had I been born 5 years earlier, like I wouldn't have had an interpreter in my class, and I would have had students just sitting there completely isolated from their peers because there wouldn't have been access to communication. So
yeah. I love that.
And who knows where I'd be today? Yeah.
There's so many things like that. I mean, man, I've talked about this before too on the podcast, but I believe there's purpose in life for sure. I think it's impossible to really know what that is, but I just look at those same things, it's like you could be born, just the fact that you were born in general is like a massive, like, luck of the draw where you were born, how lucky I am to be born where I am and have the privileges that I do have. And then just to be sitting in this seat in Coconut Creek, Florida on a podcast with my friend Becky, who I wouldn't have met you. There's so many things that could have happened that if they didn't happen, I would have never met you. I would never be sitting here. Right. And the reason that we're talking is, and the reason that I'm here is like, there's so many different things that hold those two things together. I mean, I went to Bethel College because I wrestled in high school, and I was found out about wrestling because of a friend of my mom's growing up. There was her neighbor of my grandparents, their neighbor, like their kids. And he told me about Bethel College. They dropped the wrestling program. I ended up still going to Bethel. I was roommates with Sam. He became a best friend, and I moved to the Twin Cities because of that. And I met my wife, and here I am. Like there's just so many little things that one of those little things could have gone wrong, and or could have gone different. And it's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I think about.
It is. What was the difference? Well, maybe just talk about, you kind of mentioned it at Bethel. You got out of there before you had to interpret music. Was that, obviously that played a part because you brought it up, but were there other reasons? I mean, we don't have to get into this too much if you don't want to, but
that was actually like a reason that I kind of just thought of right now.
Yeah.
I have a whole other list of reasons that I left. I actually, let's think. Chapel is like so I should say, like, I want to preface this with, like, I think Bethel is a great school and it fits certain people, and like some people thrive in that environment, and it serves a purpose for a certain group of people. And my freshman year, I was that person. Like, I loved Bethel. I didn't want to come home on breaks because I loved being at Bethel and, like, living in Shoup, and it was awesome. It was like a slumber party every single day. Just, like, such an awesome community, I loved it. And then my sophomore year, things kind of switched, and I don't know, like, part of it was the community aspect, like I was living in Tucky, and like this sounds like metaphoric, but it's like not supposed to be that. I guess it is, but like the doors on the dorms in Tucky, like when they close, they automatically lock. So it kind of shuts off that community aspect because people can't just come in and out of your room when they want, or like something about having to like knock on a door to see if someone's there, and them choosing to answer the door to let you in kind of like puts up a barrier for people to just pop in and say hi or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in, I don't even know what it was, the guys' dorm my sophomore year, over by the soccer fields. If you're listening,
right? The other
this
half
is like,
of that.
Yeah. Oh, is that Tucky? See, I didn't even remember where Tucky was. But we'd like
it was like an L shape, right? I think it was Tucky was the girls' side. I don't know.
I don't
really remember.
Yeah, I don't really either. Not important. Yeah, we'd just like prop our doors open though, and like that was kind of like open for business. You know what I mean? Or like come by, hang out. Like, I don't know. The guys, that was like how we did it. Or we'd like stick a shoe in the door. You know what I mean? Like you'd be like, hey, like, hey Joel, you there? Like, I don't know, like whoever, whatever. But
our floor was very much like, because it's sophomore year, so like you got to pick who your suite mates were and everything. Right. And I felt like everyone kind of just like stayed in their suite and hung out with their suite mates. It's true. And so it was like more separated and just less of the community. My suite was kind of weird. There was me, Ann Mitchell, now Ann Sweeney, she's married, and then Margie, and then we had a fourth girl. Don't even remember her name. Her family lived in Mishawaka, I think, or maybe Granger. Yeah. And she would spend the night like maybe once a month in our dorm.
I kind of remember that now that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
You guys were you guys were down by the like first floor, right?
Like all the way at the end. Yeah, like all the way at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
So like community dorm wise was just a little bit different. And then I was listening to Derek Griffey's podcast, and you guys are talking about like the covenant thing that you have to sign being at Bethel. And we're just like, but you're like, honestly, don't even know what it was. Like we just like broke the rules, didn't even know what the rules were, kind of thing. And I'm the complete opposite. Yeah. Okay. Like I'm the opposite. Like if I have a rule, I'm gonna follow it.
Right.
So like I followed all of the rules, and like I remember just being really frustrated by it because like there was one night that I like really wanted to fill up my water bottle, but I couldn't leave the hallway because if I left the hallway, it was past curfew, and I'd be like breaking curfew to go get water. You know, like I'm like, and I was like, what the heck? Like I'm in college. Even go get water at 1 a.m. Like what is like that's weird.
And if you're listening, so we had curfew. So curfews were weekdays was 12:30. You had to be back at your dorm in your dorm, and so where you were talking about is water was down in like the commons area, right? And so you weren't allowed in the commons area after 12:30. You had to be in like your dorm or in your hallway. Like you could be in your hallway. It wasn't like you had to go to bed, but that was like where you had to go. And then on the weekends, it was 2 a.m. Yeah, 2 a.m. You had to be back. So it's not like unreasonable, but at the same time, it's like you just said, it's this you're adults, like you know,
I just want some water.
Yeah,
like,
I just
not
want
like
some water.
I'm not going to get like a beer. Like I just want I just want water.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. So that was kind of like little things like that. Like little rules that things that seem like just like whatever.
Just little tacky
You're
rules.
Like,
and then I followed most of them. You know what I mean? Like there was occasionally like, again, like there were my junior year, we definitely exploited that rule as often as possible. But it wasn't like we were going out and drinking every night, or we were even going out and drinking at all. Like sometimes it was just like, oh, we just wanted to be out. We went down by the river or whatever and hung out, and or we went and hung out at somebody's house, and we didn't want to come home at 2 a.m. or we left at 2 and didn't get home till 3, so we'd like sneak in through the window, or you'd call a friend and have them open the door for you because you had swipe cards. So if you're listening, we had these swipe cards, and you had to swipe to get in, and so it logged what time you got in, and if you had, they would basically, you'd have a talk with your RD or your RA or whoever it was if you clocked in late. And if you had so many of those, you went on, I think it was just social probation or whatever. And they'd like,
change your curfew or something.
Yeah, they'd like change it or whatever. We weren't allowed to drink on or off campus. Even if you were 21, didn't matter. That was like the covenant that we were talking about that we signed. Boys and girls in each other's dorms was only on the weekends. Fridays was boys, Saturdays was girls, and then Sundays was both, and that was from 6 to midnight.
And like the alcohol thing, like that was not even an issue for me because, like I said, I'm a rule follower. So like I was like, I'm not 21, so I'm not going to drink alcohol. Like I never drank until my 21st birthday. So like it didn't even matter because I wasn't even of age. So but it was like I just like the feeling of going away to college and having more rules than when I'm home was a thing that seemed backwards to me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So there was that whole issue, but then the like religious side of it all, the like forced religion was something that I like really struggled with, and then like the judgment that came along with you not like subscribing to what Bethel wanted you to do religion-wise. So like going to chapel 3 times a week was like, I have a lot of thoughts on that. Like, I don't think it was necessary. I don't think, like, I would say most of us were not going there to like get something from that time of worship. Like, we were just going because we had to be there. And like the chapel at Bethel, for everyone listening, if they've never been, like it's kind of separated into 2 parts. There's like it's an auditorium, and like there's like the lower part and then a walkway in the upper part. And like very noticeable that if you go to the upper part, like most of the people are sleeping or doing their homework. Like no one's really
like all the way
actually
at the top.
like no one's really like engaged up there. And then like I would go to chapel and like there's some people there who are like 100% like all into their worship every single day. And I was like, there's no way that you are that strong in your faith that every single day for 4 years that you're here, you're like both hands up worshiping as hard as you can. Like, I don't know. I just felt like there was like people that like kind of put on this like facade when they would go to chapel. And that like really bothered me.
Authenticity and being genuine.
And it kind of became like this like, oh, like look at me, like I'm doing better in my walk than you are because like you only have like, you know, like that's kind of the vibe I was getting sometimes. And maybe that's just my perception, like maybe I misunderstood things, but I was just like, I didn't really like that.
And it really, I mean, honestly, it could be, right? I mean, there is that, but I don't think you're wrong. I think, you know, I feel that as well. I feel like there's this authenticity, being genuine. You weren't welcome to like, I don't know, not question, but like question. You weren't really, it wasn't like it didn't feel like a safe place to like ask questions that were like counter to the script in a way or whatever. And I think that's what I really loved about the guys that I ran around with, you know, the Bethel Boys series you referenced before with Derek and Sam and Tony and Calvin and Tyler and Matt and those guys, because that group of guys, like, I mean, we would often, you know, have these like deep philosophical debates and like question each other, and like, that was like fun. I enjoy that. That's one of the reasons that I'm doing a podcast, is because I love talking. One, I have no shortage of words, and I love to have like conversations, like deep thought, and you know, the conversation that we're having right now, just about, you know, life and society and whatever. Like I enjoy that. I think it's fun, and I think that it's important to ask questions, and I think it's, but I agree. I mean, there was definitely an element there that was lacking in some ways, for sure.
And I'm like, so I also was like, but I'm here at Bethel, and so like this is what I got to do because this is the rule, you know.
Sure.
Back to my
Yeah,
rule
of course.
following.
I
So
think
was
that's
like,
admirable.
I have to go. Yeah.
I think that tells a
was
lot
like,
about your character. Yeah.
But then, as the sophomore year kept going, I was like, okay, like I was like leaning more, like I'm like I gotta find, like I'm not coming back here next year. Like I need to find a way to get through the rest of the school year. And so I got a job on campus to be the person that like takes attendance for chapel.
Yeah.
So I was essentially getting paid to go to chapel.
Right.
And that was like my, that was like why I was there. Because I like was getting paid to be there. So yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was like, but then I was like, and thinking about that is kind of also like just like depicts like how I was perceiving Bethel at the time is like I was part of it too. Like I didn't like the fact that they took attendance and like you had to be there 3 times a week, and if you weren't, you had to make it up.
Yeah.
But then in turn, I became the person taking attendance. So like
you became the man,
kind of
even though you hated the man. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
no, I get that. I get that completely. I mean, there were very few people that were really excited about going to chapel 3 days a week. And I'm not saying that it wasn't beneficial. I'm not saying that I didn't get things out of it at the time.
Right.
I'm not saying that you didn't learn things. I don't think that that's what we're saying at all. It's just that, you know, I don't know. Some days it was like the last thing you wanted to do was go. And people are listening like, well, what's the big deal about going for an hour to a thing in the mornings on Monday, Wednesday, you know? But it's just this like mandatory thing. Again, you had to swipe. It's a combination of all of the rules, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's this like very straight-laced, gotta do things the right way. And I think that spilled over into the faith aspect, the religious aspect, the Christianity of it was this rule-based Christianity in so many ways, and that was a lot. I think the rules at Bethel contribute to that, and I don't think that's changed much now. I don't know what the culture is there. You know, I haven't been back, but I think that rule-based like structure of the college spilled into the Christianity, which then maybe was part of the reason that it didn't feel safe to ask questions and kind of, you know, was this like
kind of push you away a little bit.
Yeah, it's this like stiff thing, this like stuffy.
Yeah, and
sure.
like the same thing with like, so on Sunday, like I didn't have a church in Mishawaka, South Bend. Like because I just went to, I went to chapel 3 times. Like, do I need to go a 4th time on Sunday? And so,
yes,
so
of course.
And I also hate waking up early. Like, if I could sleep in on Sundays, I'm going to sleep, you know, like that's my jam. And I didn't have a car, so like I had to like find rides or whatever. It was just like a really big ordeal, and I just like didn't do it. So, and I, like, there's many times where I would go to the cafeteria for lunch on Sunday, and I'm just wearing like sweats or something, and you can just tell, like, you could just feel that like the people who are just coming back from church were like, oh, so you didn't go to church this morning?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, no, I didn't. Like it, like that kind of thing. Or like when people would find out that I wasn't in a Bible study, they would be like questioning, like, why aren't you in a Bible study? And then it's just kind of like, because I mean, I feel like I can like live my faith, like have my faith in what I believe and live it out like in my daily life. But like, I don't need to be in an organized like Bible study and chapel and church, you know, like every day of the week. And I think some people, that's like how they check in with their faith is like by going to all of that stuff. And I don't think that's really where I'm at or was at them either. So.
Well, and I think that's interesting too, because, you know, when I graduated, went off to work in Invisible Children, and it was probably within, you know, 2 years of being at Invisible Children where I finally gave myself permission not to go to church anymore. And it was one of the biggest weights off my shoulders. I just remember this like it's like breath, you know, of like, oh, I don't have to go, and it's okay if I don't want to go. And I never felt that before, and I had never given myself permission not to go. It was always that like that underlying like, I don't know, guilt. that self guilt. It's self-prescribed. I don't think that, you know, the people that I was around and at that time weren't being like, you should go, or like, you're whatever. It was just It was this one thing that I had grown up in.
Supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, I grew up that way. You know, it was a very big part of my life, and I finally reached this point where I was like, you know what? I don't believe the same things that I used to believe, and I don't want to go anymore. And I need some space and need some time to figure out where I'm at and what's important to me. And ultimately, I just decided that wasn't for me. And it was a big decision, you know, and I've made a lot of decisions since then. But yeah, I don't know. That was a thing. And I think, you know, again, it's this, I grew up as a pastor's kid, you know, and I went to church every Sunday. Same type of deal, you know, like as a pastor's kid, you can't not go to church, you know, not that I would have had the option anyway, but like, I couldn't not go, you know, it'd be like the same judgment that you felt about going to, you know, the cafeteria would have been the same judgment that my parents would have had and I would have had. And then I went to this very conservative Christian school, and that had these like really staunch rules, and I was a youth ministry major, and, you know, like I had all these things. And so like this baggage that kind of came with me that's associated with my faith in Christianity and what that meant to me. And so for me to go, you don't have to do that anymore, Shane, and it's okay. It was like big time.
Yeah, it's very similar. I grew up in the Lutheran church. My mom's whole family is Lutheran, and so as a family, we would go to Lutheran church every Sunday school, like did the whole confirmation process, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar, but like in the Lutheran church, it's really intense. Like we had Sunday school, but we also had like weekly classes, and we did a summer camp, but it was like our summer camp, like we had like flashcards, and we're like memorizing Luther's catechism. And
I had
like,
that growing up.
And like had to take a test at the end of the week, or like kind of go home or something crazy. I don't know. And so after I got confirmed, I was kind of like feeling the same way I felt at Bethel, of like, I don't know if I really like that. I'm like I can't tell you any of the creeds now, but I like memorized all of them, and like, but for what? Like, just to pass that test, like not to like I didn't take it to heart. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then in high school, my mom, I like talked to my mom, because you were told to. She let me, they were told me I needed to know all this, and I was like, okay, cool, I got it. But then in high school, I talked to my mom, and I was like, hey, like I want to go to this other church, and it was a church that rented the auditorium at my high school, and like that's actually where I met Margie, was at that church.
Nice.
Because Margie and I we went to separate high schools, but like I chose to go to that church, and I think that has like so much a part of it is like when you get to choose. Yeah. You know, versus being told what you need to do.
I wonder what, you know, and I want to get into this next, is your experience at Columbia College, but I wonder what people that, you know, didn't experience that at all, you know, like you got to kind of the best of both worlds, because you got to go and experience this, but like, I wonder what that experience is for other people. Like I actually really, really wonder sometimes. And I have a lot of friends that didn't go to the same type of school that we did, but I don't know. I just wonder what that's like because I feel like this time of your age in time of life is just a like self-discovery and figuring out what you believe anyway. But I wonder if it took us a little bit longer because of everything that we just talked about, you know? Because I was the same way. My junior year was when it was the click for me. It was like, like Derek Griffey, you know, you mentioned him, and I've talked about this several times, but he had just asked me a question, why do you believe that? And it was the first time I'd ever really been confronted with what I believed. And ultimately it was because that's what I'd been told, that's what I grew up knowing, and I had to figure out my own things. And so that was the beginning of the deconstruction of my faith and kind of figuring out what I believed as an individual. And I just wonder if that comes along for other people. I have a theory that it would, But I think it would come along at a different time and look different. We were confronted with it, and it was like an identity. I just had a podcast. It dropped on Friday. Sorry. Yeah, on Friday, which is technically today, which is when we're recording this.
I was going to say.
But my buddy Brady Peters, he was talking about how, when he went to Invisible Children, it was kind of the same idea. He had gone to a Christian school, and he got to Invisible Children, and everything he thought he knew about his faith and was just kind of like slapped him in the face. And it was this identity crisis. And so like when our identity is wrapped up in this faith and this religion and this way of life and this way that it's supposed to be and this like, rules and covenant and all these different things, it just, I wonder what the other effects in some ways, like psychological, whatever that we deal with as, I don't know, just products of that environment of like how that shaped us to be who we are today. Yeah. I really wonder.
One thing I really think about a lot is the concept of the Bethel bubble, which is something you hear on campus. You hear that all the time.
Explain that a little bit for people listening.
So it's like this idea that, so Bethel is a very tiny school. I want to say even with grad students, there's only maybe 2,000 students total, and
like
they're
less
not
than
even all
3
living
for
on
sure.
campus. And like land-wise, it's a very small campus. And like for me, I didn't have a car, so I literally just lived on campus.
Yeah,
and I never left. I saw the same people every single day. Money didn't even exist to me because I didn't need money. Like I was living in this little like utopia, like this perfect little bubble that like was self-sustaining in a way, at least for me. Like I didn't have to work. I just went to class. I did whatever I wanted. I had meal swipes. For the most part, everyone was like-minded. You have your few outliers, but like most of us all thought the same way or had the same beliefs and everything.
If you had a social life, if you had a semblance of a social life at Bethel, you like pretty much had a lot of like-minded people, because it was the people that didn't subscribe to the same things that everybody else did that were like the outliers, but they just didn't socialize with people.
Right.
Which now you understand why in a lot of ways.
Right.
But
right. Yeah. And I feel, and I could be wrong on this, but I feel like the school, I don't know if when they are like talking to like, not the students, but like the staff, faculty, whatever, like when they mention the Bethel bubble, like it's either in a joke or it's kind of like they kind of like embrace it. Like they're like, we have the Bethel bubble, like this is a great thing. And like the more I think about that, and I think of like, this is this Christian school. We're trying to we're here learning how to like spread God's love and God's word, but like the church doesn't function in a bubble. Yeah. Like
inclusion first, like this.
Yeah.
Like protection.
We got to get out of our bubble, like.
Well, isn't that kind of the like story of how Buddha came to be? Man, if you're listening and you're a Buddhist, I'm apologizing if I'm butchering this. I'm really not intending to, and I don't mean anything by this, but I'm pretty sure that Buddha came to be because his parents like protected him, kept him safe, and he was like walking down his like enlightenment was when he was walking down this path and he saw a homeless man or this man without food or whatever on the street, and it like enlightened him to the world, and thus began the like Buddhist religion, I believe. Again, don't hold me to that, but there's an element of that in the Buddhist religion, and within that, I don't know exactly what part of that. There's a lot of different aspects of that, but I think that's I don't know. I'm with you. I think I agree with you.
So then I was like, I need to get out of this bubble. And that was really hard. I like secretly sought out Columbia, and like I knew I wanted to go to like I've always wanted to live in Chicago. That was like on my bucket list that I wrote in like middle school.
That's
I
cool.
wanted to live downtown Chicago. I'm very much a city person. And Columbia is like one of the only interpreting programs in Illinois.
Nice.
And so I kind of like secretly did all my research and like applied and got accepted. And then I had to start telling people that I was leaving.
Yeah.
And that was a whole nother process that kind of solidified my decision. Some of the conversations I had with people telling them I was leaving did not go well. It was like I was breaking up with them.
Yeah.
And like they did not take the news well. And some of the
Like within
like,
your program or?
Yeah, or just like friends that I had made.
Yeah.
My closest friends were like understood and supportive,
Right.
for sure. But like other people would kind of like, they kind of fizzled away. Like after I told them, they like had no interest in being my friend for the rest of the semester. Or like my professor, when I'm in the interpreting program, made me write out a list of every reason with explanation as to why I was leaving. And was like, like when I told her where I was going, she gave me a lecture about like, well, you have to be careful because that is a school of sin and people have tattoos and piercings and all this stuff. And I was like, and I told her, I was like, well, I have 7 piercings.
Yeah.
And she was like, you do? And I was like, yeah. And she's like,
so I guess I'll fit right in. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I think I'll be fine.
Whoa.
It'll be okay.
What a rude thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, Becky. I'm sorry you had that experience. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning of all of this, like this is my experience and I don't want people to be like, who don't know Bethel to think that it's like this terrible place because it's not.
Right.
It just wasn't for me.
Right. There are a lot of things like I don't know. I've often thought like I wouldn't be who I am today without Bethel. And I appreciate the time that I got to spend there. I think it's a great school. I think you can get a great education. I actually, did you get that email the other day about like for alumni, there's like 3 questions.
So I actually asked them to take me off.
I tried to too, but I still haven't
graduate from there.
Yeah, I still haven't figured that out. But anyway, I got this thing yesterday, and it was like, what would you say you like as an alumni? What did you get the most out of it? And it was like your social and like relationships or whatever, something about relationships. And I was like, it's that. That's what I took
100%.
most out of my time at Bethel. It wasn't my education. Was my education excellent? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was great. I think you can get an excellent education there. But it was, I think that there's some of the best, there are some great professors there that have a lot of like, they're there for all the right reasons, you know? And, I think there are some really great
about
people.
What they do.
Yeah, that could be working at, big name colleges for sure and have like lucrative careers in the education world and in the college world and writing books or whatever, and they choose to be at Bethel. And I think that's admirable, and I respect that totally. I think there's a great education that you can get at Bethel College. There's the good with the bad and everything, right?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. So, and then I went to Columbia, which is the complete opposite of Bethel. Like, it's downtown Chicago. We don't have a campus. Like, our classes are in different buildings throughout the loop.
Yeah.
It's a liberal arts school. It's an art school. It's like, I remember going to, it's called Convocation. It's like the first day of school. It's like this huge like music arts festival that they have in Grant Park. And because you can't just have like a normal orientation, it's like Columbia does everything artistic, right? So they have like this huge festival. And I think it was the chancellor at the time. He like had this chant that he wanted all the students to do. And he would like say something. He would like say a phrase, and then all of the students were supposed to yell like, hell yeah. And he would say something else, then we would hell yeah. And I was like, I'm not swearing. Like I was like, I can't yell like a curse word. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like I was like it was just like so funny because it's not even a big deal. But I was like, oh my, and I was like, all these people around me are just like bursting up a storm, And I was like, it was funny. It was my first like,
culture shock
experience.
almost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. My whole first semester was just my whole time at Columbia was a culture shock. And it's such a diverse school, in like not only like race and ethnicity, but like just I don't even know. Like it's just like
Diverse in
people
culture.
of every background and every culture are there. And if they're not at Columbia, they're walking down the street next to you because you're downtown Chicago.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And like I would go to class, like so my first apartment was on Michigan Avenue, right? I overlooked the Bean, and
that's awesome.
It was awesome. Like I'll never afford that apartment again. It was a 2-bedroom I shared with 4 girls. So there's 4 of us. So like the rent was cheap because we split it that way. But it's like it was super nice. And like I would walk to class. It was a 15-minute walk, and like could easily hear people speaking 10 different languages on my way to class. You know, totally. like it's just and you have people, tourists, and then homeless people, and the businessmen, and just everyone. Like so much happening all at once. You know.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. Going back to Derek Griffey's podcast and him asking you, like, why do you believe that?
Yeah.
Like, that question was asked to me so many times when I got to Columbia, because people, like, being asked that question by someone who has a similar viewpoint as you is one thing, but then being asked that by someone who completely disagrees with what you're saying or, like, just has a completely different perspective on things is different. And I think you touched on this in Derek's podcast of like having to be able to use your own words to explain and to like defend yourself.
Exactly.
And so like through that, like I learned more in my first semester at Columbia about like what my faith looked like than I did in my 2 years at Bethel.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and I like, so at Columbia, my first semester, I met right away, at that convocation, actually, I met my friend Ting. He's Taiwanese. He's not Christian, but somehow he always finds the Christians. Like that's who his friends are. So, he would come over and we would stay up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, and he would just ask me question after question, and we'd have conversations like this of just like like very real conversations, and just like getting like he just wanted to know more, and like I wanted to know more about his background, and then we just had awesome conversations.
That's awesome.
Challenging each other to like figure out what we actually think.
Well, Invisible Children was that for me, right? Like it's the exact same thing that you're talking about. And if you listen to Brady, our podcast, it may have been a little ramble fest because it was just a interesting conversation, but we went pretty deep. Like his faith is very important to him, and he, like I mentioned, he kind of had this identity crisis in a sense of like his faith when he got to Invisible Children, because there's so many of these amazing people with all the same like this idea of like from different different, you know, whether you're atheist or whether you're Buddhist or whatever, different cultures, different idea. And the idea of what that looked like and what it meant to be a Christian was like challenged. And so he was forced to kind of face that same question of like, what do you believe? But whatever. And it's such an open and safe and like welcoming environment, and everybody's trying to figure things out themselves, you know? So many times when you live in a house with 60 different people of different cultures and backgrounds and religious beliefs and whatever, there's so much that comes out. And so it's just rich with this like environment, this incubator of like finding yourself and figuring out what you believe, and challenging what you do believe. And I don't know, it's just great. And so I love that environment. I love challenging it. Like I love, sometimes I just take, me and my wife especially, I try not to do this with strangers because people get confused as to what I actually believe, but I sometimes I just take the other side just to see like, like, oh, I get that. Like I'll play devil's advocate for a bit, like, because I understand where they're coming from. So it's like I don't know. I think it's good to just ask questions and challenge things. And that environment is so, I think it's healthy for just an individual and strengthening who you are, something that I wonder, I guess not a theory, but I just wonder, I see a lot of like insecurities coming from people in the similar backgrounds that you and I have grown up in, and coming from that, and not being just this insecurity in who we are and making decisions. And I just wonder if some of that doesn't stem back to this like idea of this submissive / like fall in line, follow the rules, do what we say, type of mentality versus like figure out what you believe and figure out who you are, and welcoming kind of more what, the red letters, or what, if you believe in the Christian faith, what Jesus says. And I just wonder if some of those like insecurities really stem from some of that background.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like when I got to Columbia, I was like, every day was like a challenge. Like I was up to the challenge every single day to be like, how am I going to live out my faith today? Because like, how can I love the people I'm around, even though they're different from me, or even though they don't agree with what like maybe their beliefs are different than mine. But like, how can I still love them? Because I have to still love them. And like, how can I do that? And so,
I just don't think they're mutually exclusive. This is 100% with what you said. Like, I don't believe the same things I believe anymore. I don't call myself a Christian anymore. But that doesn't mean that I don't still care about and love the people that are in that community. And I've been conflicted with that for so long, because for so long I felt that those two things were mutually exclusive, that I couldn't believe something, or I couldn't support something that was Christian or was, had a religious undertone or whatever it is, because I didn't believe that. And I think that's silly. Like, I can still support things that are doing good within that religion. Like, who cares, right? And I really saw this when I went to Thailand with my wife on our honeymoon. And I was so intrigued by, and just wanted to be respectful to and participate in, some of the like traditions there within like the Thailand culture. And I came back and I was like, I would never do some of those things in the Christian church. Like, I want to like push that away. And why is that? And so I was kind of like confronted with that idea of why do I have this feeling with my own faith that I grew up in? And it was kind of this like, you need to face that and not like be so standoffish with it, but it's okay. Like, you don't have to believe it, but you can still respect it, and you can still appreciate it, and you can still call out the things that you don't agree with. That's okay too. And I don't know. I want exactly what you said. Like, I just want to be this inclusive person of like, how can I show people I love them? And, like, it doesn't matter what you believe, and it doesn't matter who you are. It's like, it's hard. It's challenging sometimes.
But. And part of like that learning process for me was like, I learned very quickly to just like, I had to be honest with people and be like especially like the LGBTQ community. Like, I'm like, listen, like, I grew up in a very like, I don't want to say sheltered, but sheltered environment.
100%.
And like, I haven't met people that like I know that have actually like that have come out. So like, I like didn't know anyone. Like, I knew nothing about that entire community. And so like, I just had to be honest, and I'd be like, hey, tell me about it. Like, I'm ignorant, and I need you to teach me about this, because I don't know. And like with other subcultures as well, like just being open and telling them like, you know what, I don't know what that is. Can you teach me about this? Because I want to get to know you better so I can love you better. And,
we're fearful of what we don't know.
You know.
We're afraid of those things we don't know. I'm trying to get more of that community on the podcast as well. So hopefully in the future we'll have more of that specific group of people of the LGBTQ plus community. And the same, like, honestly, it makes me super nervous, because I want to be so respectful and I want to be like inclusive, like, and I don't, and I've had this like anxiety in so many ways about like inviting certain people on the podcast, not even within that group, but also within that group. Just because I don't know, and I don't want to come across, and I don't want to be disrespectful, and I don't want to, and I just realized that like, that's how I have to go about it. And I just have to be like, listen, like, if I say something wrong, like, please confront me. Let's talk about it. Like, right here. Don't wait. Like, call me out, because it's not my intention. Coming from a place, it's not your intention. It's because you genuinely
didn't know that what you were saying was offensive
Yeah.
or hurtful or whatever.
Yeah. And I just want to
Yeah,
learn.
definitely.
I need to know. And I think that other people do
Right.
too. And everyone has a story. Everyone's story matters.
Right.
What's your story?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're doing here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the more and I found out, like, the more I got to, like, ask questions and, like, try to be more understanding of different cultures,
Mhm.
like, the more I realized how similar we are, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
so many more
like, we're not
similarities than
actually
differences.
that different.
No.
Right. Yeah. So
We all want to be treated
yeah.
the same. It's just, it's just maybe has a different, like, facade, a different, like, exterior, and who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was my everyday at Columbia.
I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. And it's just, that was the environment that I needed to, like, figure out, like, who I was.
That's
And,
awesome.
Yeah. So.
So you graduated from Columbia with your degree in sign language interpreting.
Yeah.
And I saw you worked at the Shed Aquarium. That's pretty cool.
Yes, I did. And that's, that's kind of one of those things too, just about Chicago in general that I love is, like, I have so many friends that, like, except for, like, one connection, we have no reason to be friends. And, like, I worked at the Shed Aquarium, and, like, me and all my coworkers were so close, and we still are. I'm so close with several of them. But, like, we would hang out every single weekend. Like, we were all really good friends. But when you look at us, like, none of us have anything in common. Like, we have, like, a few similarities and interests, but, like, because we worked at the Shed, that was, like, our bond.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome because we got to, like, if I met someone on the street, I probably never would have been friends with them.
Right.
But, like, because we worked at the Shed, we just, like, were forced to be friends and, like, figured out ways to, like, I don't know, like, it was cool because it was such a dynamic group.
Yeah. It teaches you exactly what we were just saying about as well, as, like, this perspective that we have. We have these outside perspective of people sometimes that we prescribe to them or, you know, label them or whatever. It's these outside judgments of, I think it's just the way the brain works in some ways. We try to, like, quickly figure things out, and it's just the way we do. And, but when you get to know people and it's like, oh, they're not what I thought they were, or, like, why was I so standoffish? Like, it's that fear of the unknown. Like, oh, I just don't know. I think it speaks more to us as individuals, ourselves, than it does to other people, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh man, I need to be more inclusive and more, like, challenging how I think about people. And I had the same thing in multiple different places, you know, throughout my life, where I'm like, I had this snap judgment of someone, and then I was like, dang it, they're really cool. I like them. Yeah. You know?
I have a funny story about that with Margie, actually.
Okay.
So we were in the same church that was at my high school, but met at my high school, but her and I were not friends.
Right.
And so we met there. We were in the same, like, small group in our youth group because we were in the same grade. And but I was friends with other people that I had known. Some of the other kids went to my high school or whatever. For whatever reason, I knew a bunch of people at youth group. So, like, I fit in right away. I was a new girl, but, like, I knew everyone or a lot of people. So it wasn't like I was new, but I wasn't. And Margie and I were, like, we weren't not friends. Like, we were, like, acquaintances. Like, we would smile, say hi to each other, like, whatever, like, acknowledge each other's presence, but we weren't really friends. And I'm not sure when it changed, like, when we became, like, actual friends.
Buds.
But then later in life, she was like, so, actually, like, I really hated you when you first started coming to youth group. And I was like, why? And she hated me because every Sunday I'd show up to youth group with, like, a Frappuccino from Starbucks. And she was like, who is this, like, basic Becky walking into youth group every Sunday with, you know, like, and it was, like, because of that, she, like, immediately, like, nope, I can't be friends with this girl.
I know.
And
Isn't
then,
that funny?
You know, things work its way out, and we're still friends today. So
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy how those things. I have similar stories as well with friends or things where I'm like, something like was like, you know, like, whatever, and then I got to know them. I'm like, dang it, they're really cool. I like them. Like, I'm such a jerk. Like, I'm such an idiot. Why did I feel that way? I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. Becky, you're involved in some cool stuff now too, right? I mean, you play softball, or you coach for softball, something along those lines?
Yep, all of. I play for the Chicago Theater Softball League. It's this league it's like slow pitch 16 softball.
Yeah.
It's been going since, I want to say, the 80s. And it's a softball league that each team was representative of the different theaters in Chicago.
Nice.
And when it started, like, you had to be a part of that theater in some capacity, whether you're an actor or like worked in lights or tickets or management, whatever. Like, you had to be affiliated with that theater.
Yeah.
And then every team gets like a wild card, just like a random person. And so I'm that person on my team because I'm not a theater.
Nice.
But yeah,
that feels good.
And so and it's super fun. It's actually like super competitive. I've been playing on that for 3 years now.
Nice.
And it's just a really good time. It's just like a mix of all different types of personalities, and we like grill out after the games, and it's super awesome.
That's cool.
A lot of fun. Yeah. And then I coach high school softball.
You coach high school softball?
Yeah, JV softball at Whitney Young High School.
Nice.
Which might sound familiar. Michelle Obama went there.
Cool.
Michael Jordan's kids went there.
Dang.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
This is my 6th season there coaching.
Isn't coaching fun?
Awesome. I love it.
I love it too. I know.
It's so different than I thought it was going to be, like, when I got into it. Looking back now, when you look at like you growing up, how you like looked at your coaches, isn't it like kind of a cool, like, it's like this meta experience where you're like, oh, like, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how much you did, like, after we all went home.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're not just a coach.
No.
Like, you're a mentor. You're like a counselor.
How much you think about the students and the people that you coach. Your athletes.
Yeah. And Chicago doesn't have a very good program for like the softball players at a young age. So my first few seasons, I would say half of my team were girls who had never picked up a softball before.
That's cool,
like,
though.
Some of them I like wasn't even entirely sure like what the reason was that they came out for the team, because like they had no idea like what softball was. Like, didn't know where first base was. You know, like so. But it's awesome because that's why I like coaching JV, because it's like we only have JV or varsity. So I get the kids who don't have the skills yet or need to like fine tune their skills.
Yeah.
So there's so much room for growth, and it's so fun to just watch them from tryouts to the end of the season, seeing how much they improve every year.
Yeah. So
it's
cool.
a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're also a runner.
Yeah.
You've done some.
Yeah,
go on.
Ran 6 marathons now.
Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah. Again, it was one of those things. When I first moved to Chicago, I went to the Chicago Marathon that fall and went to the finish line. This was before the whole like Boston bombing thing. So you could just go and sit at the finish line. And I remember just like cheering on these people in that last like 100-meter stretch to the finish line. And there would be people who would like start to walk, and then you cheer them on, and they like start running again, and they get past the line, and you're just, yeah, you did it. And, I'm so excited. The marathon's next weekend, and I'm not running it, but I'm like going out and cheering the marathon is like my favorite day of the year. So I'm like, super
that's
pumped
awesome
for that. I did Chicago 5 times, and then last year I actually ran the Berlin Marathon.
No way.
In Germany.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. That's a lie. The race was terrible. It was not a good run for me at all.
Yeah.
But being in Germany was awesome. I loved that.
Do you mind sharing your times? Like, what's your like average time for a marathon?
So my fastest is 4:26.
4:26. I don't know how good that or bad that is, but it sounds awesome.
It's not the best.
It's impressive to me.
It's like, so if you ran a 10-minute pace the whole way, would be 4 hours and 20 minutes. So it's just over a 10-minute mile. Yeah. So I ran 2 marathons, and then training for my 3rd, I ended up having knee surgery.
Ouch.
yeah, so I had to drop out of training in 2015. Came back 2016, and that was kind of just like to prove to myself that I could still do it.
Nice.
So it did not go well. Yeah, and then so I actually had like the best training of my life last summer. Was running like a 9:30 pace, like gonna just like kill it on this Berlin Marathon, right? And then I don't know what happened. Like I think my feet were still swollen from the flight over.
Oh yeah.
And then as you run, your feet swell more. And like I was by like the 18th kilometer,
you couldn't
20th
feel
kilometer, so like halfway, it was like, oh, I could feel that. It was like so painful. Like every time I would step, it just hurt. And so I literally stopped at the med tent and got a foot massage.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
that like added 20 minutes to my time.
Sure.
Yeah, I still finished like it was like just over 5 hours, I think.
Nice.
But it was just very frustrating, and I actually like on the course, I remember just like crying while I was running, just like so frustrated. Then my friend, who actually lives, she grew up, she's German. She lives in the small town like 2 hours away from Berlin.
Yeah.
She came, and I saw her on the course, and she kind of like pumped me up to finish.
Yeah.
But then I finished, and I was just like so just upset and frustrated. And I went and sat out like in the middle. So they like pride themselves in this like non-alcoholic beer that they give you at the finish line. But they ran out by the time I finished. And then they had like a free massage tent. So I was going to go get a free massage. And then they were like, oh no, that's closed. And I was like, what the heck? Like there's nothing here. And I like just ran this terrible race. And I just like went and sat in the middle of this field and like my head and my hands just like crying. And this lady came up to me like from France and like in broken English was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just frustrated. Like I didn't do well. And she's like, no, but you did it. Like you finished. And I was like, I know, but like that wasn't my goal. And she's like, it doesn't matter. She's like, not everyone can say they finished the marathon. And I was like, I know, but, and she was like, no, it's like she wouldn't let me like, she's like, no, you did this. Like you need to have like some pride in what you did. And she like helped me get back up. She gave me some Kleenex and like walked me back to the gear check. And like, it was just a really like sweet moment. Again, like
you're crying. I'm not crying right now. It's okay.
Like it was just like, and like she barely understood me because and it was it was really cool. It was a cool moment. Probably my favorite moment of that entire race was that part of it. So
congrats. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. That's like on my list of like one day I'm gonna run a marathon. I just said that on the podcast, so gotta hold me accountable, people.
You're gonna do it. That's one of my great skills is like getting my friends to run marathons. So I actually have a friend running next weekend in Chicago that he said like 6 years ago as a joke, and I was like, nope, you're doing it. Yeah, so he's doing it next weekend.
Keep following up with me, Becky, because one of these days I want to do it. I want to just say I've done it. Like that's really the only reason. It's like I want to challenge myself to do it, and like I hate running with a passion, and so like I think it's a mental toughness piece and just like a proving myself like. I know I can. I just don't want to. Does that make sense? Like, and I just kind of want to like prove myself that I can. So.
Yeah, you should do it. Chicago's super flat. It's one of the flattest ones. So.
Okay.
You should run it.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Yeah. The other funny part about Berlin was like I was like halfway through, and they already changed the advertisements on the bus stop saying the guy who won the marathon, he set the world record. So I was like halfway through, and they've already changed the signs, like the advertising on the bus stop to say that like the world record was broken. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
Like, that's the worst.
That was funny.
Wow.
It was fun.
I was saving this part for last just in case people fell off. I didn't want to promote this team, but you're a Cubs fan.
Yeah.
Ugh, gross.
Yep. Yes. I have season tickets.
I was gonna ask because I've wondered about this for so long because I know you go to the games a lot, and I'm like, she's got to be a season ticket holder, and I didn't know if you like work there, and if that's how you like if you like interpreted there, like I didn't know.
Oh man, don't even get me started on accessibility at Wrigley Field because that's a whole nother like 4-hour podcast. But they don't have accessibility. That's the problem. But Yeah. But no, I actually, in my freshman year of high school, signed up for the Cubs season ticket wait list.
Yeah.
In hopes that by the time it became my turn, I would have graduated college and maybe worked a little bit
And be able to afford it.
Then I would get tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then 9 years later, I graduated in December from Columbia. I had to go an extra semester. And in that semester, as it was wrapping up, I got an email from the Cubs saying that it was my turn to buy my ticket.
Wow.
So literally 5 days before I graduated college, I went and picked out my seat.
Nice.
And yeah, and it was awesome. I just have one seat because at that time I had no money, so that was all I could afford.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm not going to have someone to bring with me every game anyway, so
Yeah.
I just own one seat, and my section is awesome. Everyone who sits around me is season ticket holders, so we have our own little family there, and we celebrate each other's birthdays.
That's cool.
They used to number the sections differently. We've always been section 527. This year they reversed because they're remodeling the stadium. But since we are section 527, every year on May 27th, because the date is 527, we would have 527 Day. And so we would decorate our section with streamers and posters, and we'd bring food and cupcakes and
That's cool.
birthday hats and all this stuff. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Go White Sox.
No. No, I will say I go to a handful of White Sox games every year too, because they're okay. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. I was always I don't really follow baseball too much, to be completely honest. But I was a White Sox fan when I was younger, growing up, and Big Hurt, Frank Thomas, he's my guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So, just been I just call myself a White Sox fan now.
Yeah.
Stinking Cubs people,
Yeah. 2016 was awesome. It was everything I could ever have imagined. Called off work a lot. I was my boss knew. My boss was you're going to the games, right? And I was yeah. And she's okay. I'll get a sub for you. I was okay. She knew. Everyone knew where they could find me.
So, that's cool. So
awesome.
Where do you work now, and what's your job like? And
so now I work full time for the community college network in Chicago, Chicago City Colleges.
Okay.
And interpreting interpreting college classes. I mostly interpret for a nursing student.
Cool.
So I interpret all her med classes and then go with her to her clinical site too. So I'm in the hospital with her. It's
cool.
been super interesting.
It's a very niche kind of, skill too, medical devices, medical words and signing. I'm sure that's difficult.
Oh yeah. Yeah, human anatomy is not the easiest words to spell. And prescriptions are a little
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
It's been I've had to learn a lot through that.
Job security,
but I love it. Yeah, for sure. And I interpret I also pick up just random freelance jobs. If I see something that looks fun, I'll do it. But I am full time at the college, so which is 37.5 hours a week. So I don't really need to work extra, but sometimes I just see something that looks fun and I'll do it.
Yeah. Cool.
I interpreted at the Blackhawks convention.
Oh, nice.
That was pretty sweet. Jonathan Taves and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, just random stuff, high ropes course. You're out in the middle of the forest interpreting.
That's cool.
Cool. And then I interpret at a call center, so I interpret phone calls for deaf people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I know that the deaf community is a very close knit group of people, and it's got its own culture within it. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. I volunteer every summer at a camp for deaf kids.
Yeah.
Indiana Deaf Camp. It's
cool.
in Milford, Indiana.
Nice.
Which is in the middle of nowhere. I actually have never driven there.
Most of Indiana's in the middle of nowhere, let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. it's kind of a joke because, like, I'm turning 30 this month, but, like, my parents still drive me to summer camp every year because I
Welcome
don't have
to
a
the
car.
club.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. But anyway, So this camp has been around for a really long time, and
Okay.
I've been there. I started going there in 2012, and as a counselor, I've been going back every year. And this past year was my third year as a group leader. So I lead the group, and then I have a couple of counselors that help me out. And I think that deaf community is the one that I'm like most passionate about. I really hate interpreting for children. Like in my day-to-day life, I don't interpret for kids. It's just not something I enjoy, but I love interacting with the deaf kids. And at this camp is like the perfect opportunity for that. And like just watching the kids grow. Like our camp director started at camp as I think he was like 3 or 4 when he started going to camp, and he's gone as a child. Then he became counselor, and then he became group leader, and now he's director of camp. And like people who grew up at camp became counselors, and now their kids are coming to camp, and it's this huge family and community. And just an opportunity for kids to come and be with a group of people who are the same as them. Kind of the opposite of what we were talking about earlier is like if their whole lives are dealing with people who are different than them. And then they can come here for a week and everything's the same. And like they come and, you know, some of them have hearing aids or cochlear implants, and they can just take them off and they don't need to worry about being able to hear anything because people are signing to them.
That's cool.
And unfortunately, a lot of their parents don't sign, or their families don't sign. And so like when they're at home, they're very isolated. And then they come to camp and they're just the same as everyone else.
That's cool.
And I just have one story about camp this year. And it's like, every year I'm like, maybe this is my last year. And then something happens and I'm like, nope, I have to come back again. And this year, there was a boy in my group. He got, like, his parents came up to the registration table to, like, drop him off. And we're in this huge room. Everyone's signing to each other, right? And the mom and dad come up to the table, and they look at me, and they're like, can you hear us? And I was like, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm hearing. And they're like, oh, my gosh, thank God. They're like, we don't know any sign language, and everyone's signing, and we don't know what's going on. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. And they're like, this is our son.
But kind of a problem, but anyway. But their son also doesn't know sign language. Like, he's hard of hearing, has hearing aids, but has never learned sign. And so they're like, we're kind of concerned. Yeah, they're like, we're kind of concerned because, like, everyone's signing, but he doesn't know sign language. So, like, is this okay? And I was like, no, it's totally fine. Like, I'm actually an interpreter, so I will make sure that he has access to communication all week. Like, if I have to interpret for him, that's totally cool. And they're like, okay. And I was like, you know, we're going to go fishing, canoeing, like, climbing on the rock wall. Like, we're going to do all this stuff. Like, he's going to have the best time. Don't even worry about it. And they're like, okay. So his parents leave, drop him off, whatever. And the first day he was kind of like a little like just kind of like deer in headlights, like what like what is happening, you know? Which the first day of camp always is kind of that way in some ways, you know, regardless of like what background you come, and then you step into that scenario. Oof.
And you're like, I can't even talk to half of these people. So like and I should say some of the kids there are hearing, but their parents are deaf. So there are kids who could just like talk to him, but so he is like the cutest little boy. I want to say he is 12 or 13. Lives like on a farm, has like the best Southern accent, just like loves like fishing and hunting and all that, like just like awesome. And so he kind of like stuck with the counselors a little bit at the beginning because he didn't really know who else to like how to interact with the kids. But then the first morning, one of our counselors taught him how to sign good morning. And the rest of the week, like, he would go around and say good morning to everyone in our group because that was like the one sign that he like had down. And so like cool. He knew that he could say good morning to them, so he would do that. And then I remember and like as it kept going, like the kids opened up to him, and you know the deaf kids would figure out a way to communicate with him. Whether it was more of like gestures or like charades almost, but like they figured out a way to make it work, and like he became friends with a lot of them. And would come up and ask us what different signs were throughout the week. And I remember we were making chocolate chip cookies like over a bonfire. That's and like a Dutch oven. That's one thing that we do every year. And so the kids all have to do it themselves. Like the counselors don't help. And I remember standing there, and all of a sudden, because everyone's signing to each other, making these cookies, communicating in sign language, and all of a sudden I hear his little voice. He's like, "Wow, this sign language thing is pretty neat." And it was just like, it was awesome. I was like, yeah, it is. I was like, you're right. And so then at the end of the week, we do a talent show every year. And my group decided they wanted to do Deaf Camp Idol, so it's kind of like American Idol.
Yeah.
And so there was 4 deaf girls who signed the Baby Shark song.
Okay.
And then this boy and another girl, we taught them the signs for one of his like favorite country songs.
Okay.
And so he like got on stage in the talent show and signed the song.
Wow.
Like country song. And his parents were in the audience for that. And when the kids leave, their parents have to come and like sign them out with me, so I know that they've been accounted for.
Yeah.
And this lady comes up to me and like gives me a hug, and I don't really know who it was, and she's like crying. She's crying, and I was like, and she's like, "I'm Carter's mom," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "Yeah," and she's like, I don't even know what to say right now. She's like, I'm so just like in awe.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I've never seen him so happy before.
Aww.
I've never seen him. Like everyone in his class thinks he's outcast. Like no one understands. No one knows how to communicate with him. She's like, I've never seen him so happy before. And she was like, thank you so much for welcoming him in this week and
that's so cool.
just like making him a part of this. And I was like, yeah, like, you know, like that's why we're here. Like this is why we have this camp, is so that people can feel a part of something, even if they don't the other weeks of the year, you know. And so it was just like a really, really awesome experience to see that happen. And he was like super pumped to go home and like watch YouTube videos and like learn sign language and try to get like connected with resources back home, because he realized just like how much of a difference it really made.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
We have 3 minutes left, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
So, but I want, if you have something quick that you could say of like for people to understand that don't come from that community, that don't necessarily speak sign language or understand what it's like to be deaf, what would you, I don't know the right terminology, Becky, I'm sorry, but what would you say to those people that are hearing, that don't understand that community?
Man, I would say that they're not any different than us. Than hearing people. I think there's a huge misconception that deaf people like can't do anything, and the only thing they can't do is hear, and that's the only thing. And I think, you know, people are so easy, like quickly to like write them off on things because they're like, oh, they're deaf, they can't, but they can. They just can't hear. They just need a little bit extra assistance when it comes to communication, and that's about it. Other than that, they can do and be whoever they want to be, you know. I think that's the most important part, is realizing that they're not all that different than the rest of the hearing people. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. We're gonna wrap it up right there. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing part of your story and your experience at Bethel and interpreting, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Absolutely. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you're tuning in, go check out crazyfaceuno.com. We've got mugs for sale on there. There's ways for you to donate if you're not interested in a mug. All of your money goes to supporting and helping us build this project and build this, what we're trying to do here, share people's stories and be inclusive in this environment. We love you all. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, peace!